The safe was supposed to be his fortress, a steel box hidden under the floorboards of his Brooklyn bedroom, where Ethan kept his truth locked away. At 24, he wasn't ready for the world or his mother. To see the novels, the poetry, the stories of queer love that set his heart ablaze. But that morning, when he found the small wooden cross on his pillow, his world tilted, and fear sank into his bones. Ethan stood frozen, the cross clutched in his trembling hand. Its weight felt heavier than it should, as if it carried his mother's silent judgment. She hadn't said a word, but the message was clear. She'd found his books, his secret, his heart. He could still hear the creak of the floorboard as he'd hidden them last night, thinking he was safe. Safe. What a fragile word. His phone buzzed, pulling him from the spiral. A text from Javier. Meet me at Prospect Park? Need to see you. Javier, with his easy smile and fearless spirit, was the one person who made Ethan feel like he could breathe. They'd met 6 months ago at a used bookstore in Williamsburg, their hands brushing over the same dog-eared copy of Giovanni's Room. Javier, 25, with curly blonde hair and a laugh that felt like sunlight, had asked Ethan out for coffee that same day. Now, Javier was his anchor, but even he didn't know about the safe or the cross. Ethan shoved the cross into his pocket and grabbed his denim jacket. He needed air, needed Javier, needed to escape the suffocating walls of his childhood home. His mother, Clara, a devout woman with a heart both fierce and unyielding, had raised him alone after his father left when he was 5. She taught him to pray, to love, to be good. But her love came with edges, sharp and unyielding when it met anything she didn't understand. Ethan had learned early to hide parts of himself, to bury his questions about boys, about love, about who he was. The Brooklyn streets buzzed with life as he walked to the park. Street vendors called out, kids laughed on scooters, and the autumn air carried the scent of roasted chestnuts. Ethan's mind raced. How had she found the safe? He'd been so careful, locking away the books he'd collected over years, stories of men like him, loving in ways his mother's Bible didn't allow. He'd bought the safe secondhand, a clunky thing with a combination only he knew, or so he thought. At Prospect Park, Javier was waiting near their usual bench, his green sweater bright against the fading light. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his blue eyes narrowing with concern. Ethan forced a smile, but his voice cracked when he tried to speak. Instead, he sat beside Javier, their knees brushing, and let the silence hold them. The park was alive with joggers, dog walkers, and couples, but in that moment, it was just them, 2 young men caught in a world that didn't always make space for their love. "I think my mom knows," Ethan finally whispered, his voice barely audible over the rustle of leaves. Javier's hand found his, warm and steady, but Ethan pulled away, glancing around nervously. "She found my books. She left a cross on my bed." Javier's face tightened, but his voice stayed soft. "What kind of cross?" Ethan pulled it from his pocket, the wood smooth and worn. "This." She didn't say anything, just left it there. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I don't know what she's thinking, but it feels like she's trying to fix me." Javier's jaw clenched, but he leaned closer, his voice fierce with protectiveness. "You don't need fixing, Ethan. You're not broken." He reached for Ethan's hand again, and this time, Ethan let him hold it, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and relief. Javier's touch was a lifeline, but the cross in his other hand felt like an anchor pulling him under. They sat in silence, watching the sun dip below the trees. Ethan's mind churned with memories of his mother's prayers at dinner, her quiet disappointment when he skipped church, the way she'd look at him sometimes, like she was searching for someone he wasn't. He'd always known coming out to her would be hard, but he hadn't expected this silent, piercing judgment that cut deeper than words. "What are you gonna do?" Javier asked, his thumb tracing circles on Ethan's palm. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "I can't talk to her yet. I'm not ready." He paused, his voice breaking. "What if she hates me?" "She's your mom," Javier said, though his tone held no certainty. "She loves you. But love can be messy when people don't understand." Ethan nodded, his eyes stinging. He wanted to believe Javier, but the cross felt like a warning, a line drawn in the sand. He thought of the books in the safe. Call Me by Your Name, The Song of Achilles, dog-eared pages filled with underlined passages that spoke to his soul. They were more than books. They were proof he wasn't alone, proof that love like his could exist, could be beautiful. And now, his mother had touched that sacred part of him, and he didn't know how to face her. As the park emptied, Javier stood, pulling Ethan to his feet. "Come on," he said, his smile soft but determined. "Let's walk. You don't have to figure it all out tonight." They wandered through the park, their shoulders brushing, their steps falling into rhythm. For a moment, Ethan let himself forget the cross, the safe, the fear. He let himself feel the warmth of Javier's presence, the way the world seemed softer when they were together. But deep down, he knew this was only a pause. Tomorrow, he'd have to face his mother, the books, and the truth he'd locked away for so long. The next morning, Ethan woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of his mother humming a hymn in the kitchen. It was a familiar routine, one that usually comforted him, but today it felt like a trap. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the cross now hidden in his dresser drawer, its presence lingering like a bruise. He dragged himself downstairs, his stomach knotted. Clara was at the stove, her dark hair pulled back, her apron dusted with flour. She was 48, strong and wiry, with eyes that could pierce through lies. She glanced at him as he entered, her expression unreadable. "Morning, Ethan," she said, her voice steady but distant. "Pancakes?" "Yeah, sure," he mumbled, sitting at the table. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words. He wanted to ask about the cross, to demand why she'd gone through his things, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he watched her flip pancakes, each movement precise, controlled, like she was holding herself together as tightly as he was. After breakfast, she handed him a grocery list. "Need you to pick up a few things," she said, her tone clipped. "And we need to talk when you get back." Ethan's heart sank. He nodded, grabbing his jacket and escaping into the crisp Brooklyn air. The grocery store was a blur of fluorescent lights and crowded aisles. Ethan moved mechanically, tossing items into the cart, his mind replaying the image of the cross on his pillow. He wondered what Clara would say. Would she confront him, pray over him, kick him out? The possibilities churned in his gut, each one worse than the last. Back home, he found Clara in the living room, a Bible open on her lap. The sight of it made his chest tighten. "Sit," she said, her voice softer now but still firm. Ethan obeyed, perching on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped tightly. "I found your books," she said, her eyes fixed on the Bible. "Under the floor, in that safe." The words sounded foreign in her mouth, like it didn't belong in their home. Ethan's face burned, but he said nothing, waiting for the blow. "I didn't mean to pry," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I was cleaning, and the floorboard was loose. I saw the safe and I got curious. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did." She finally looked at him, her eyes searching. "Ethan, why didn't you tell me?" He swallowed, his throat dry. "Tell you what?" he asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. He was stalling, clinging to the last shred of safety. "About those books. About who you are." Her voice broke, and Ethan saw something new in her eyes. Pain, not anger. I raised you to be honest, to trust me. Why did you hide this? Ethan's hands shook. He wanted to scream that he hid it because he was terrified, because her faith felt like a wall he could never climb. But instead he said, I didn't know how. I thought you'd hate me. Clara flinched, her hand tightening on the Bible. Hate you? She whispered. You're my son. But the words didn't feel like a promise, not yet. They hung in the air, fragile, waiting to be tested. The conversation ended there, unresolved, with Clara retreating to her room and Ethan escaping to his. He texted Javier, his fingers fumbling. Talk to her. It's bad. Can I come over? Javier's reply was instant. Always. Javier's apartment in Bed-Stuy was small but warm, filled with plants and mismatched furniture. When Ethan arrived, Javier pulled him into a hug, and for the first time that day, Ethan felt like he could breathe. They sat on the couch, a movie playing in the background, but Ethan barely noticed it. He told Javier everything. The safe, the cross, his mother's words. Javier listened, his hand resting on Ethan's knee, grounding him. She didn't kick you out, Javier said cautiously. That's something, right? Maybe, Ethan said, but his voice was hollow. But she's hurt, and I don't know if she'll ever accept me. Javier's eyes softened. Give her time. She might surprise you. He paused, then added, You don't have to go through this alone, you know? I'm here. Ethan looked at him, his heart swelling with something too big for words. He wanted to kiss Javier, to lose himself in the safety of his arms, but the weight of the day held him back. Instead, he leaned into Javier's shoulder, letting the quiet comfort of his presence ease the ache in his chest. Days turned into weeks, and the air in Ethan's house grew thick with tension. Clara didn't bring up the books again, but her silence was louder than any argument. She stopped humming hymns, stopped asking Ethan to church. It was as if they were strangers sharing a house, tiptoeing around the truth neither was ready to face. Ethan spent more time with Javier, finding solace in stolen moments at coffee shops or late-night walks through the city. Javier's confidence, his unapologetic way of being himself, gave Ethan courage, but it also made him ache for what he didn't have, a family that could love him without conditions. One evening, as they sat on a rooftop overlooking the Manhattan skyline, Javier shared his own story. He'd come out to his parents at 18, and while his father had struggled, his mother had embraced him fiercely. It wasn't easy, Javier said, his voice soft, but they came around. Maybe Clara will too. Ethan wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at him. He'd seen the pain in his mother's eyes, the way she clutched her Bible like a shield. Still, Javier's words planted a seed of hope, fragile but stubborn. One afternoon, Ethan returned home to find a note on the kitchen table. Dinner at 6. We need to talk. His stomach twisted, but he couldn't avoid her forever. When he sat down that evening, Clara had made his favorite lasagna, rich with cheese and memories of simpler times. She looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with her napkin. I've been thinking, she began, her voice low, about you, about everything. She took a deep breath. I don't understand it, Ethan. I don't understand those books or who you love. But I've been reading, trying to learn. Ethan's eyes widened. Reading what? Clara hesitated, then pulled a library book from her bag. A worn copy of Being Gay, Being Christian. I got this from the library, she said, her cheeks flushing. I wanted to understand you. I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I'm trying. Ethan's throat tightened. He hadn't expected this, not the book, not the effort. For the first time, he saw a crack in the wall between them, a glimpse of possibility. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. They talked for hours, haltingly at first, then with growing honesty. Clara admitted her fear, her confusion, the way her faith clashed with her love for her son. Ethan shared his own fear of losing her, of being rejected. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a fragile bridge between their worlds. That night, Ethan lay awake, his mind spinning. He thought of Javier, of the books still locked in the safe, of the cross he hadn't touched since that first day. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope that he and his mother could find a way forward. Spring arrived, painting Brooklyn in shades of green and gold. Ethan and Javier's relationship deepened, their love a quiet rebellion against the world's noise. They spent weekends exploring the city, art galleries in Chelsea, jazz clubs in Harlem, quiet corners of Central Park where they could steal kisses without fear. But at home, Ethan's progress with Clara was slower, a dance of small steps and setbacks. One Sunday, Clara asked Ethan to join her at church. He hesitated, memories of sermons condemning sin flashing through his mind. But her eyes were earnest, and he agreed, hoping it was another step toward understanding. The service was familiar, hymns, prayers, the weight of expectation. But the pastor surprised him. She spoke of love, of acceptance, of a God who made no mistakes. Ethan glanced at Clara, who was listening intently, her hands clasped tightly. Afterward, over coffee, Clara admitted she'd been attending a new church, one that welcomed everyone, including queer people. "I didn't know places like this existed," she said, her voice tinged with wonder. "It's different, but it feels right." Ethan's heart swelled. He told her about Javier, about their love, their dreams. Clara listened, her eyes glistening, and when she reached for his hand, it felt like a promise. Not perfect, not complete, but real. That evening, Ethan invited Javier to dinner at their house. It was a risk, but he was tired of hiding. Javier arrived with flowers, his smile nervous but warm. Clara was polite, even kind, though Ethan could see the effort it took. They ate, laughed, shared stories, and for a moment, Ethan felt like they were a family. Not the one he'd lost, but a new one, built on hard-won trust. By summer, Ethan no longer needed the safe. He moved his books to a shelf in his room, their spines proudly displayed, a testament to his courage. Clara didn't flinch when she saw them. Instead, she asked to borrow one, her curiosity outweighing her fear. One evening, Ethan and Javier sat on their bench in Prospect Park, the same one where they'd shared so many moments. The air was warm, the sky streaked with pink and gold. Javier took Ethan's hand, his voice soft but steady. "I'm proud of you," he said, "for facing her, for being you." Ethan smiled, his heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." He leaned in, kissing Javier gently, unafraid of who might see. The world hadn't changed, but he had, and so had Clara. Back home, Clara was waiting with a surprise. A small pride flag tucked into a vase on the kitchen table. "I saw it at the store," she said, her voice shy. "I thought maybe you'd like it." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He hugged her, feeling the weight of years lift from his shoulders. The cross, the safe, the fear. They were part of his story, but not its end. Love, messy and imperfect, had won. As Ethan and Javier walked through Brooklyn that night, hand in hand, the city pulsed around them, vibrant and alive. Ethan knew there would be more challenges, more moments of doubt, but he also knew he wasn't alone. He had Javier, his mother, and the courage to live his truth. And that was enough.